Okay.
Oh,
Now.
recording. Hi,
Okay. Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing good. All right, so let me jump right into it. Let me show you exactly how to put together a resume, cover letter, and LinkedIn in hopefully 30 minutes and try to keep it entertaining. What?
I
What?
mean, look, I've been telling my students over and over and over again, never start something off abruptly. Always give background to the audience. Always give some sort of an overview of what's going on, so that your
Mhm.
audience isn't clueless about what's going on. So hey, uh, they already know me as the boring ass lecturer that they have to suffer through twice a week, and plus the guy who kind of bullies them on a regular basis. Who might you be?
Okay, my name is
Yeah.
Fatima. I own a resume writing company and I've been in the business for about 12 years. I put out a
Mhm,
lot of content related to resume writing. I was going to jump right into it because I have a lot of great stuff for you to share, for me to
mhm,
share with you, for you to go
mhm,
through,
mhm.
and hopefully try to pack a few jokes in there too to keep the audience alert. Right, that's the end goal.
No, the joke is your face, but yeah,
Okay,
please, yeah, let's go. Yeah,
let's go. All right, so
yeah,
assuming most of, I'm going to just share my screen right now. Can you see my screen?
yeah. Now I can.
Okay, so assuming most of you guys are CS students, you're probably going to be looking for software related jobs. And I dug up a few. This is like the top job in Rosie. And I'm just going to see if I can. Well, I, I'll just copy this for you so that it's a little bit easier to see. And this will be part of what I ideally should be copying too, but just for the sake of this exercise, I'm going to jump right
Mhm,
into it. And that's what we're going to do. Where initially, when you first start looking for a job, you want
mhm,
to identify like maybe 2 to 3 job descriptions that are really nice and detailed and have a lot of great information. And we're going to be basically using this to reverse engineer what your resume should look like. So
mhm,
this is what you'll see in the job description. And you want to basically highlight 2 things. The first is going to be hard words. Hard words are things that I would search for. So for example, if I wanted to hire a web developer and I know that I'm looking for a website for myself, I already know I'm using WordPress and I need someone who can like set up my analytics stuff and stuff like that. So I would probably search for something like WordPress developer Google Analytics, right? And I would
okay.
show a bunch of people, they would have those keywords in their profile. And this is exactly how recruiters search for people. And this is also how these applicant tracking systems, like the one built into the Rosie and LinkedIn platforms, work. So recruiters will basically get a bunch of resumes that are ranked against this language and whatever other search criteria they're prioritizing. So let's say, for example, in this case, it looks kind of it looks more like a data analyst job, frankly, than an engineer job. But like the key thing that they're looking for are like reports, and that you have to be familiar with the Oracle uh, suite, basically. So that's a hard word that that person would be looking for: Oracle, web developer, data analyst, whatever it is, right? So what we do is let me actually copy this into Microsoft Word, use my brain a little bit, and we can go through and basically highlight the hard and soft words. So hard words are things that they're going to be basically searching for. Like when you have a search query for Google, what do you search for? So probably stuff like this. This is all hard stuff. And soft stuff is stuff like fulfilling the dynamic requirements of the business. Like I'm not going to search for that, right? Like I'm not going to search for, let's say, software engineer fulfilling the dynamic requires my business.
Right, right,
We
right, right.
want to convey that in your resume, your cover letter, and your LinkedIn. So that's
Right.
the
So
first step. Uh-huh.
let me interrupt you for just a
For
moment.
sure.
So we've divided the skills into two basic categories. That would be the hardcore skills, like related to the field, and then softer skills, which might include people skills, team, working with teams, and all of those things. And with the help of these keywords, people usually not only search for jobs, but also the platforms or the recruiters actually working on those platforms hit you up or look at your profiles using those.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm going to show you a really ghetto version of what an applicant tracking system looks like on the inside. So let's say I am going to search for, I don't know, best chapstick for dry skin.
Okay. I wonder why, but okay.
Okay, so just like this shows you a little blurb, the meta description of that page. Just like that, your resume is summarized into a little blurb for the recruiters. So they're not going to be able to actually see the entire article and, you know, get the answer to who you are and what you can do for them. They get a little blurb that helps them decide whether or not even clicking on your name is worth their time, right? So what helps create a good blurb is basically the number of years of experience you have. Is it matching what they're looking for? The technical skills that they're looking for, is it matching what you have in your resume, and so on and so forth. So this is where your hard skills come in. However, this applicant tracking system that's parsing your resume and spitting out this little description isn't the only thing reading your resume. A person is also reading your resume, right? So if you just say, भाई मुझे Oracle forms आते हैं, reports आते हैं, SQL आते हैं, like whatever, like if you just say that in your resume, you're not going to come across as competitive as someone who says, look, I actually go through and I talk to different teams with competing interests and I boil down what they want and I fulfill those requirements, right? So speaking to the human reader is also really important.
Yeah. And how do we do that then?
Yes. So how do we do that? So what we want to do is, if you go to my website, there's this blog, which Hasham will share with you. You have to ask yourself a set of questions that help you identify when you've used each of those skills in the past. So you guys probably don't have a lot of professional experience, but think about your projects and think about your internships and times when you've had to volunteer in your school societies. Have you ever had an opportunity to, you know, talk to conflicting stakeholders and boil down their requirements into a really proper solution, ideally using, you know, these reporting structures and stuff? If not, even speaking to that soft skill is enough. So go through the job description and think about, look at each line. When have I done this? When have I done this? A lot of times what we do is we start the resume like, okay, let me start with my education. Let me write this internship, what I did, blah, blah, blah. That's the incorrect way to write a resume. What you want to do instead is actually look at the job description as your core framework and say something like, okay, let's see. I did this at Career Tuners when I did blah, blah, blah. I did this with Hasham when we worked on whatever project, right? And then you use this to put your resume together. At the end, you can fill in a few gaps. You can, you know, say, you know what, this internship that I did or this society that I worked with has pretty much nothing to do with software development or project management or whatever it is that you're trying to go into. But I think it's interesting and I think it showcases my leadership skills, so I want to include it. Those projects, just summarize it to a line to include at the very bottom, and I'll show you an example of that in a minute if Hasham doesn't have any questions.
Sure, please, go ahead.
Okay.
We'll reserve my questions for later then.
So Hasham's going to share this with you. This is my favorite way to write a resume for engineering students specifically. This guy was a quality engineer, slightly different from what you guys are doing, more of a focus on manufacturing, but he had just one, like a lot of you guys, just one internship that was related to his field. Everything else is stuff that is unrelated to his field. So for example, this was a school project. He had to do it for school. It's nothing like fancy or anything like that. He also had to do this customer service job just to pay the bills to be able to go to school. I'm sure a lot of you have that situation as well. And then he was in 3 different societies where he did some volunteer work and some interesting stuff. So what we did is we notice how many lines this resume is. It's first of all 1 page, but the primary, like these 6 lines, these 3 lines, and these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines are really heavily focusing on quality engineering, even though that's not what he was doing for like, his 40 hours per week or whatever. Maybe that took up only, let's say, 5 hours per week, but we're really using the real estate in our resume to focus on that. And this stuff he spent a lot of time on, like coordinating fire performances at multiple events, all of that. That's a lot of work. That takes a lot of time. But while it's really cool and it's really interesting to read about, you don't really need to go into a lot of detail. You need to instead focus on the critical technical skills that are very much of interest to the employers that you're interested in working for. So for this guy, all of those lovely hard skills that we highlighted, whatever he was familiar with, we put them in the skills section right here. And we also sprinkled them throughout his resume. This is not related to CS. Some of you might be familiar with manufacturing terms, but things like workflow improvement, root cause analysis, etc. These are very interesting to someone hiring in the space. So we introduce that in the front, because what people are doing when they're reading your resume is they're going along your job titles. For example, if I wanted to hire a lecturer, the first thing I would do is, have you been a lecturer in the past? Because if you have, that tells me that you're a very interesting candidate and I'd like to interview you for a very similar role. Similarly, they're looking along your job titles. Have you done anything related to that? And if you can draw their eye to, hey, look, I haven't had a job. I'm new to this field, but I have this really interesting skill, they will pay attention.
Okay.
So how you put your resume together is reverse engineer the job description, then jot it down in that order that, whatever is most relevant goes on the top. Maybe it's your degree, maybe it's your courses, maybe it's a summary of like your best projects. Maybe you just start directly with your project. Whatever seems to be like the heaviest and meatiest, you start with that. And then you slowly go down to least relevant. And then you keep the really fun and interesting stuff at the bottom, because people like reading that. And they will remember that, but it's not going to be very critical to their decision making. However, if you don't include it at all, you do run the risk of just coming across as a piece of paper and not someone who's multifaceted. So if I was reading this resume, I would be like, coordinating fire performances, and I would immediately think, okay, Danny is the guy, the fire guy. And it just makes you a person rather than just a piece of paper, which is really critical when you're writing for this very tired person who's going through, potentially hundreds and hundreds of resumes per day. Something like that can grab their attention. So things out, but do summarize them heavily. As
Okay.
Hasham likes to say, the community involvement section of your resume should be like a woman's skirt, long enough to cover everything, but short enough to keep things interesting.
All right. On that interesting note, let me ask my questions.
Sure.
Thanks for running me under the bus.
Of
But
course.
as usual, okay, yeah, no, I get it. Okay, so I get asked a lot of questions, and that might sound a bit dumb to you, but please humor me with that. Okay, so first of all, is it at all necessary or important to write your objective on your resume?
I would say it's not really a good thing. For example, today I got a resume. I was trying to hire a marketing manager for my business, and I got a resume that said very skilled person with accounting experience, and I immediately was not able to take him very seriously. And I did read through his resume because he did, make my shortlist, but it biased me, right? So when you do apply for a job, when you have an objective summary like this one has, try to focus it on their hiring needs. And I do think this is the one thing that you should try to tailor, not to every job, but to every set of jobs. So let's say you have one thing unique for software engineer jobs, you have one line for software developer jobs, one for data analyst jobs, all the different categories of jobs that you're looking for. Just come up with something really interesting that shows how you solve that kind of employer's biggest headache.
Okay, so those traditional objectives or statements don't really get read or don't really matter a lot.
They don't matter. They can do more harm than good, and it doesn't really add any value. Instead, if you can use that first like I said, people, they have a very short attention span. They're only looking at your resume for a few seconds. They're very tired. It is very stressful to read so many resumes back to back. If you can immediately use the first line to be like, hey, your problem, I can solve it, that resume will get read a lot more slowly, a lot more carefully, with a lot more interest than one that has just like, my name is Hasham and please hire me for a lecturer position. I'll be like, whatever, I don't know you.
Yeah. All right. And okay, so for students who don't have all of this experience that I don't think Danny does have, what do they do? Do they highlight their studies, their GPA,
Exactly.
what sort of projects they have done, or should they focus more on the skills that they have acquired during the course of their degree?
Whenever possible, if you have done anything practical, even if it was like a homework assignment where you had to put together like a research problem and then, solve it hypothetically or whatever, showing that kind of problem solving skill and real world application is going to look better than just saying, okay, I took a course on calculus. And if we take a look at Danny's resume in the courses, I didn't list all his courses. He had to take a lot of physics classes, a lot of calculus classes, and rather than wasting space writing calculus 1, calculus 2, calculus 3, whatever, I focused on the key word, which we, again, get from here. So let's say if he had to take a class on, reporting for executives, I would probably just put reporting, and that's it. Reporting for leadership or something like that. So copying the language as much as possible is really critical. If you feel like that's a little weird, the course name is different from what I'm putting on here, you can say something like course overview right here as a heading, or built a foundation in, and then just try to fill the space with keywords. That's one thing. The second thing is, if we take a look at this was just a school project. Like, it wasn't like a major thing. And this guy, like, he was very hardworking. He was from a very underprivileged background. He had to do a lot of work outside of his school in order to even be able to go. So he didn't really have time, like some of the more privileged kids, to network and get those fancy internships and, all of that stuff. So he really had to use his homework assignments like this in order to show that he had that practical skill. And if you have that kind of situation where you've done a lot of stuff, but just not super related to your degree, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. As long as you can show that you can do the technical aspect of your role, you can use the rest of your experience to show that you have those softer skills. And if we take a look at this job, which I think is really interesting, there's this project manager job. It's an American job, so it's a little different. But if we take a look at some of the requirements here, like, this is not really super duper technical, and you maybe could have done something related. Even if you were, let's say, on the yearbook team or your school newsletter, you may have worked with different teams to develop cost estimates for publishing your newsletter, planning the outlet, the outlay, whatever. So really think critically about, how can I answer this question? Really.
So for each role that you apply for, ideally, should there be a new resume made for it, or can you operate with a template and then change things around as you go?
I would recommend, changing things around as you're going. Having multiple resumes for each job, multiple cover letters even for each job, is not really the best use of your time. And I would also caution you against applying to like a huge range of fields, because that's going to be very exhausting unless you don't have anything. Go ahead, like, knock yourself out. Do apply for like teaching jobs and project management jobs and whatever seems of interest to you. But for those, you probably will need a very different resume. But for fields that are very related, like let's say data analyst versus quality control person, I mean, in some fields, those can be very, very related. Probably don't need a different resume entirely, but you probably should change the skill section here, and obviously the first line where you're speaking to their needs.
Okay. All right. Also, what is the difference between a functional resume and a traditional one?
A functional resume basically summarizes your strengths at the top and then lists your history at the bottom. I'll give you an example and I'll tell you why they don't work.
Functional resumes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Interesting.
this is what a functional resume looks like. Oops. So you have like you put your skills at the top and then you lump all your experience here. But this doesn't really work in the real world for a couple of reasons. First, when you have a resume like this, the applicant tracking system looks at this and says, okay, this person has 9 months of experience in this role. They have 9 months of doing root cause analysis. Versus in this experience, in this resume, sorry, you can't really tell what they've done in this role at all. Additionally, when a human being reads your resume, they are going to be like, why did you do this? This is not the most traditional layout. You're trying to hide something. What are you trying to hide? This is, it immediately brings their guard up. So I wouldn't advise it. Just rearrange your resume so that your most relevant things are at the top. Maybe your degree isn't the most impressive. Maybe your degree is an unrelated field, or maybe you changed your majors, whatever. Put it at the bottom. Put your most interesting and most relevant projects at the top. There's no rule against that, but don't use a functional resume.
Okay. Also, I've noticed that the resume that you've shown me, Danny's resume, it does have all these bullet points, but you don't use phrases. I mean, you've written almost complete sentences, and those sentences are also, show what Danny has achieved. They don't just say that he's a great guy. They actually quantify it, like, he improved something by 30% or achieved this and got revenues to increase by this much percentage. So is that how you ideally should do it?
Whenever possible, yeah, try to show that you solved a problem or that you helped capitalize on an opportunity. And if that's just not possible, you can do something like this: test and analyze raw materials, and this is basically what I did. This is the context in where I actually used the skill. As a student, you're not always going to be like solving problems and having dramatic increases in revenue by doing whatever you're doing. But whenever possible, do show that you solve problems, that you made things better, you made things faster, you made things easier, you made things cheaper, and, more user-friendly, maybe, that kind of thing.
All right. Okay. And also, I wanted to ask you this question. Do you think that there is a difference in terms of cultural ways of representing your resume or yourself through your resume? For example, in America, that might be very different from what it is like in Pakistan, maybe. And are people sort of influenced by the things that have been going on, so they expect certain things from a resume based on where they are geographically speaking?
Definitely, yeah. For example, in some parts of Europe, it's expected for you to show your photo. In America, if you do that, it's a big no-no, because there can be people are like, why are you putting your photo? Now, if I don't pick you, I'm gonna get sued because you're this color or like whatever, so it's a big deal in America to not have your photo. So if you are applying outside of Pakistan, I would recommend Googling what the standard resume looks like in those countries. But otherwise, the practices that I'm sharing with you are basically universally applicable.
Okay. And one question that I get asked a lot, what is the difference between a resume and a CV?
So in the United States, a curriculum vitae is used by members of what we call the SAMS Club, which is science, academia, and medicine. When you are in the SAMS Club, it's really important for you to show your publications, your research work, your theses, your patents, and all of that. So if you're going into pure research, pure academia, or medicine, you want to have a really long curriculum vitae that shows all of that. However, a resume doesn't detail everything. I mean, we don't see all of, well, Danny probably doesn't have any, like lots and lots of published work, but we don't see that here. And we wouldn't see this kind of content. Like we wouldn't see dollar signs usually in, in a CV. However, it's used differently and when you go higher up, like if you're trying to be the, director of a hospital, you would want like the
Yeah.
CV resume blend. You want to show that you have that bottom line strategy eye, but also that you are a really good researcher. In Pakistan, however, they are used interchangeably. It's how we use it in America.
Yes, yes. And a lot of people pronounce it resume or something like that. Because it's not, it's probably a French word. It's pronounced resume, right?
I don't judge. You can pronounce it
No,
however
I
you
don't
want.
either.
As
I
long as
don't
it
either,
gets you
but
the interview, as long as it gets
yeah,
you,
yeah,
FaceTime with the hiring manager, call it
yeah,
whatever the hell you want.
yeah. But okay, sure. Pronunciations are not that important or a major concern for us. Okay, could we take a very short break here because I need to plug my laptop into charging so that we
Yes.
don't run out of battery.
Let me
Okay.
stop the recording.
Yeah.